All right, well, good morning. Thank y'all for coming out this morning. As you can see, our numbers have grown significantly, and we're here this morning, Mark Warner and I, to once again reaffirm the position that we have maintained over the last year and discussions that we've had, and to show our support of the select committee of 12 individuals, 6 Republicans and 6 Democrats from both bodies in the United States Congress, and to urge those folks to look at the big picture and to look at what it's going to take to send the right kind of message to the marketplace when it comes to the issue of retiring the $14.5 trillion debt that this country is facing. I think it's pretty obvious when you look at this group that's up here. We're not only bipartisan, we stretch on both sides of the spectrum in our respective conferences. That's how serious we know the issue of this debt is, and we know that this debt is choking this country. And we feel that it's time to check our political hats at the door and to step up and do what is the right thing for the American people. We are in total support of the committee itself and the structure of that committee and the power and authority that's been given to that committee. And it's our purpose as a bipartisan group of members of the United States Senate, which now exceeds a third of our membership. We have 34 members who have 36 we have signed on, and we had 2 more added this morning. You'll have a list of all of the 34. Plus Senator Hutchinson and Senator Klobuchar have been added as of this morning. And there are a number of others that I'm sure are going to be added to the list as we move forward. But it's been great to work with my friend Mark Warner. He's been a terrific partner. We have been at this for well over a year now, and I think it's pretty obvious that there's an awful lot of groundswell in the United States Senate for doing the right thing. And the right thing is putting all the issues on the table that are necessary to deal with this issue of retiring this debt. Mark?
Well, thank you, Saxby, and thank you for all you've done. We've got a lot of folks up here. We want to give a number of folks a chance to talk. You know, we've seen the Simpson-Bowles Commission. We've seen the Rivlin, Domenici. We've seen what the so-called Gang of Six put together. We kind of know the framework of where the solution lies. We want to say to the super committee, if they step forward, we got their backs in terms of taking on these tough issues. And I just want to thank the folks from both sides of the aisle who've stepped up on this. Clearly, we've got to have a plan that addresses our spending issues, our revenue issues, our entitlement issues, and I think we've got the framework of that. And you know, I know if he stepped in here yet, Senator Durbin and Senator Coburn, who both brought special things to at least our discussion. Senator Durbin, particularly, making sure that we protect those low-income folks with some of the poverty numbers that are out. Senator Coburn making sure that we've got real enforcement mechanisms. We think that we can suggest some ideas, but it's going to be up to the super committee and a whole group of folks who've got some great ideas behind us. With that, I'll turn it over to somebody else who's been very active in this effort, Mike Johans, a great former governor from Nebraska.
Yeah, we like that. Well, it is great to be here with you today. I think it's obvious to everyone we are here today not because of party registration. So much of what happens in Washington results in our appearance at a given event or news conference because of our party registration. That is not the case today. We really are here today as members of the United States Senate, but mostly we are here today because we are citizens of the United States, really the greatest country in the world. And I think I can say that we are collectively very worried about where our country is at from a fiscal standpoint. I supported the whole notion of the joint committee. I was a yes vote on that. But I'm also very mindful of the fact that if they get to 1.5 trillion or 1.2 trillion, whatever the number is, that is only a single step in the right direction. Everybody here believes that we have to do more. And we are here to support that effort. We are here to say, look, that is the right step, but think big. Take this as an opportunity to look across the whole budget, to look at tax reform, to look at how best to manage this issue. And you will have, I believe, a growing number of United States senators, not just the 36 that are represented today, but a growing number of United States senators who will step up and do the right thing for the country. So I'm very, very pleased to be a part of this. With that, let me, if I could, invite to the podium the chairman of the Budget Committee, Kent Conrad from North Dakota.
Thank you, Senator Johan. Well, first of all, special thanks to Saxby Chambliss and to Mark Warner for once again leading this effort to bring people together, Republicans and Democrats and independents, to send a message that this is a defining moment for our country. We are on an unsustainable course. We are borrowing 40 cents of every dollar that we spend. The spending of the country as a share of our national income is the highest it has been in 60 years. Our revenue as a share of national income is the lowest it has been in 60 years. So clearly, we need fundamental tax reform. We need fundamental entitlement reform. We need to cut spending. We need to get on a more sustainable course. That is critically important for our economy. It is critically important for our national security. This is a message from a large group of senators to the special committee that we're with you. Be brave, be bold, go big. We know that the goal that has been set for them, $1.2 to $1.5 trillion, is a beginning, but it should not be the ending. We urgently need a package in the range of $4 trillion. We just had a hearing in the Senate Budget Committee this morning, bipartisan hearing, and the message from top economists in the country was that we need a package of about $4 trillion to really change the trajectory of this debt. So that's the message from this group. Go big, be bold, don't hesitate to do what's important for the country. Senator Ayotte.
Thank you, Senator Conrad. I want to thank the Senators Chambliss and Warner for bringing this group together. As a new member of the Senate, one of the things that's really struck me is that every single person standing here, every member of Congress, we have very high expectations for ourselves. And many of us are parents. I'm the mother of a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. We set high expectations for our children. And then we get to Washington and we settle for very low results, and we don't set the right expectations for ourselves. And the American people see it, and they know that we can do better, and they expect more of us. And that's why I'm so heartened to see such a large group of senators on a bipartisan basis coming together, saying to the super committee, let's set expectations much higher than where they are. I voted against the debt ceiling agreement. The reason that I voted against it is because we heard from economists, we heard from our rating agencies that the minimum that we had to do was $4 trillion in debt reduction over the next 10 years. So I'm so heartened that all of us are here today saying that to the committee, please, we will be with you, show some courage, go for at least $4 trillion in debt reduction over the next 10 years. Let's show the American people that we can set expectations here of what they expect of us. And let's make sure that we do it and show some courage. We have to take on tax reform. We have to take on entitlement reform. And I ran for the United States Senate for one reason, and that is I talked about my children. I know that if we don't address this fiscal crisis, that we will not be passing on the same quality of life in America that we have had the privilege of enjoying. And that's what it's all about. So I say it's time for courage here. And the fact that so many of us would get together shows you that there is a bipartisan group that is ready to address this. And one final point, it took two parties to get us $14 trillion in debt. and it's going to take two parties to get us out of this debt and this mess that we're in. So thank you.
Hey, thanks everybody. I'll be brief. It's such a joy to be here with so many people from both parties. I want to say a special thank you to Mike Johans for the work that he's done over the past few months with me to see if we could help assemble people on letters that say things like, we know we need to do discretionary spending cuts, we know we need entitlement reform, we know we need a tax reform. But the voices that I want to reflect to you today are the voices of the people of the state of Colorado. We are a third Republican, we are a third independent, we are a third Democratic. And for 2.5 years, I've traveled the state having town hall meetings, and we've talked about this problem. And they're clear on what they want. They want us to materially address the problem. That's the $4 trillion number that Ken Conrad talked about. They want to know that we're all in it together, that we all have something to contribute to the solution. They emphatically want it to be bipartisan, because they don't trust either party's go-it-alone approach on this. The only thing I would add to any of that is that whatever solution we come up with has to satisfy the capital markets, because as Ken Conrad will tell you, every percentage that our interest rates rise is going to add $1.3 trillion to our debt. Now, this time when I went home during this recess, every single town hall meeting started with somebody saying, "What's wrong with you guys? Why can't you work together to solve this problem?" Local elected officials would say, "We've got big problems that we're trying to solve in our communities, and we're finding a way to work together. What is wrong with you? What is the deficit of cooperation that Washington has? Not just the debt and deficit that's on our balance sheet." And so to see this number of senators come together, assembled on the general parameters of where we need to go, I think is a great step forward, and is something that the people of my state are going to see as a very hopeful sign at a time when what we need more than anything else is to project confidence from this town that we can actually get our house in order so that they can get the economy moving again. So thank you. And Mark, are we going to take questions?
I think actually we've got a lot of senators.
Okay.
Dick was part of the group. Do you want to make a comment, Dick? And then if there was Bob Corker, maybe a couple more quick comments from anybody, and then.
Well, thanks to, I'll be very brief. Thanks to Mark and Saxby for bringing us together here. I was part of a group of 18 in the Bowles-Simpson Commission, part of the Gang of Six, and now part of the group of 36 or whatever. Growing. And what's wrong with this picture? Because if you take a look at this picture of gathered senators, it's exactly the opposite of what the American people think is going on in Capitol Hill. What we're trying to tell you is there is a real, honest conversation taking place between Democrats and Republicans about tackling the biggest financial challenge this country has ever faced. Don't get me wrong, we see things differently. That's going to happen. But we do believe there is enough common ground that we can come together and say to the special committee, please take a look at our work product. Take a look at where we are today. Use this to build on, to really address your charge of $1.5 trillion and go beyond it to a $4 trillion deficit reduction. We're going to have differences about timing and dealing with the recession. I'm going to feel strongly and continue to feel strongly about protecting America's safety net, the most vulnerable people among us. But at the bottom line, I've found over and over again in these meetings is there's a lot more that brings us together than divides us. And if we will sit in good faith and work together, Democrats and Republicans, we can solve this problem and many more.
I've got a Republican colleague. Well, let's kind of make sure we keep switching back and forth, and then we'll open it up for. This is not exactly a shot group, so.
So I appreciate everything that's been said prior to me coming up, and I know that most of us believe the number one threat to our country today, the number one threat, has been our inability to deal with the issue that we're all here today focused on. I know that most Americans are actually focused on the economy, and I would say they go hand in hand. To me, the very best way to deal with the issue that Americans in their daily lives are most concerned about is the economy. This short-term economy is for us to ensure that we've dealt with the long-term issues that this group is assembled here today about. I really believe beyond a shadow of a doubt, every cell in my body says to me, if we can build confidence by dealing with the longer-term issues that this group has assembled today, that Saxby and Mark and others have brought together. That is the very best thing we can do to stimulate the economy for the short term. So to me, they go hand in hand. And the very best jobs and economic package that could possibly happen for this country would be for this super committee to do exactly what this group today assembled is urging them to do. We're here to support them and tell them, as so many people have said, we want to support their efforts. We hope they'll go much further than their base case and their mandate. And if they do, and if they do it appropriately, with the concepts that have been laid out, we want to be there with them. So I thank all of you for bringing us together.
Let me just say that just for the for another new member such as my colleague Kelly, I've never been more proud of being part of a group that has come together in a bipartisan effort to move this country forward. And I think it sends a strong message to America that we can work together and we will work together. Proudest day I had was when we showed up maybe a month ago, and there were 50 of us, all like-minded, wanting to fix the big problem. In my great state of West Virginia, the people were concerned about the next generation. Not as much about the next election, but the next generation. And they're going to be very proud to see that there's a group of senators like-minded working together. You know, when former Chairman Mueller, Joint Chiefs of Staff, said the greatest challenge we have as Americans is our finances. I was concerned about that. He could have picked an awful lot of problems that we have around the world and challenges we have, but he said the finances. And I think that is our greatest challenge. And I think you see a group of senators here willing to meet that challenge and go beyond. So I'm willing to work any way, shape, or form that I can to move this. And as my colleague Kelly had said, she voted against for certain reasons, but she's looking for the same result. I voted for it, for the debt bill that we had previously. I voted because I believe that the committee that they put together that we're supporting, the 12 members, have the ability to go large, to go big and fix a big-time problem. So we both are looking for the same results. We had different ways of coming at it, and it shows you how we can come together as a group. Thank you.
Anybody, before we get to questions? Whoops, sorry.
Yeah, let's open it up. Fire away, and we'll.
Any specifics to the super committee on how to go bigger, on specific areas where you agreed on taxes and
I hope all of you saw the chart we had up here, which lays out principles that we are all agreed upon. We don't think it is the function of this group to tell that committee how they need to do it. You'll see that one of our bullet points is that we hope they will use as a foundation the other bipartisan efforts that are out there, whether it's Simpson Bowles or Rivlin Domenici or the Gang of Six, but that's their job.
Or Coach Wyden, who's probably done the most of the extensive work on tax reform and needs to be in part of the discussion too. So, you wanted to add something?
It's a good question. I think individually and in some cases collectively, we've worked on introduced bipartisan legislation that addresses expensive cost overruns in Medicare and Medicaid, ways to fix the Postal Service to save tens of billions of dollars, to save tens of billions of dollars in Medicare and Medicaid, ways to deal with 15,000 pieces of surplus property that we don't use, a $300 billion tax gap, rescission powers, enhancing the president's rescission powers, 40 co-sponsors on that alone. All of that legislation, almost all that legislation has bipartisan support. There have been hearings on that legislation, and if, to the extent that you can have legislation that's shovel-ready, there's a lot of it that's ready to go, and a lot of it is supported by folks in this group.
Regardless of specifics for now, is the super committee product, in your view, an appropriate venue for short-term job creation?
I don't think there's any question about it. You saw what CBO Director Elmendorf said yesterday before the Senate Finance Committee. He said that if you have even, meaningful corporate tax reform, that you're going to see a growth in this economy like we've never seen. It's going to increase revenues without increasing tax rates. You're going to be able to lower tax rates to historic lows if you eliminate tax expenditures and tax deductions, as has been proposed in several different bipartisan proposals. That in and of itself will invigorate the economy and without question will create jobs in a way like we've never seen.
And it's to get specific then, since you have tax reform and lowering tax rates, is some spending within that vehicle appropriate as well for short-term job creation?
Well, I think that's an issue that they've got to look at. There are a number of us who feel like if you have increased spending, that it needs to be paid for. It needs to be paid for in the right way. And that's a different debate, but that is a part of the overall package I know that we'll be getting from the president on an entirely different issue.
Given that none of the leadership picked any of the Gang of Six members, people who had their own plans, and do you think that ultimately leadership really wants a big package that has a lot of pain in it, that there's the will not just among the 34 who signed this, but among the leadership who runs the show?
I think we need to let the guy who's been fighting this battle longer than anybody on the Hill answer that question.
You know, look, we're not here to speak for the leadership. We're here to speak for this group that is stepping forward in a bipartisan way, saying to the special committee, go big, be bold, let's really address the problem, and look at the work that's already been done. You have the work of the Fiscal Commission, the work of the Group of Six, the work of Domenici-Rivlin. You have the excellent tax reform proposal been put forward by Senator Wyden and Senator Coates. These things should all be looked at. Frankly, they don't have time to reinvent the wheel. In the Group of Six alone, we spent hundreds and hundreds of hours. They don't have that kind of time. So I think they're going to have to borrow heavily from the work that's already been done.
Senator Conrad, I guess, seems also pretty clear that they don't have the time to do something as complex as tax reform, which is part of the glue that's holding this group together. So if they can't do tax reform in the time frame, how do you address that issue in a way that allows the end result to be big?
They could lay out a commitment to do tax reform and lay out an assignment to the committees of jurisdiction to provide it within a certain time frame as part of an overall package. You know, if you look back at both Simpson-Bowles and the Group of Six, both of them adopted a very similar approach to give an assignment to the committees of jurisdiction on what they needed to achieve through tax reform.
Let
me touch on this in terms of tax reform. First, look already at the number of times tax reform has come up in the super committee. So if you ask about the leadership, it's clear that it is now on the table. And my view is that it would be possible to put together a guaranteed legislative path to completing tax reform by early next year. This is an issue now where if there is a will, there is a way. We've done it before on the jobs question when Democrats and Republicans teamed up. In 1986, we created 6.3 million new jobs in 2 years after that legislation was passed. There have been projections that we could even exceed it. We understand what the challenge is, and that is to give up tax preferences, inefficient tax preferences that are on the books today, to hold down marginal rates for everybody and keep some fairness with a graduated rate structure. And it's now outlined in a variety of proposals. I've had a chance to work with a bipartisan group now for 3 or 4 years. Senator Gregg and I, now Senator Coates and Senator Begich. Tax reform is an issue that if there is a will, there is a way, and there is a path to getting it done by early next year. And I want to let Senator Coates get
well, just 2 points. I want to emphasize that what has been said before, and that is this committee has very little time to come forward with a substantive package. And frankly, what we are asking and hoping that they will do. So they need to look at what has gone before. Now, I give great credit to Mark Warner and Saxby Chambliss and the Gang of Six for the efforts that they put in, literally, maybe thousands of hours, if not hundreds of hours. They have something in place that they can be built off of, by this special committee. Ron Wyden and Judd Gregg, and I was privileged to inherit the work that they put together. This is a 2.5-year project that is underway. It has been vetted, it has been scored. It is revenue neutral. It doesn't raise some of the issues that might take it down. that is in place to go forward with. So it's not like they're reinventing starting all over here to invent the wheel. It's there, something to look at. So whether it's Bowles Simpson, Gang of Six, Wyden-Coates tax reform, it's out there for them to work with and fine tune. And frankly, they just have a few weeks to do it. And I don't see how they can get to where we all want them to get to without following that model.
Since we've taken a lot of your time, and it's a half hour, and people's lunch is coming up, we'll take one more, maybe.
I have a question for the Republicans here. Could any Republicans here support tax reform that would be considered a net tax increase? Would the amount that the tax expenditures were lowered or eliminated, would that have to be offset or exceeded by reducing the rates?
I think you've seen plans that we've signed up.
Well, let me make sure that we're very clear that, first of all, we're not telling the committee what to do, but we're encouraging them to look at the tax reform proposals that have been laid out there. None of us want to raise taxes. What we want to do is we want to close the spending and revenue gap. We want to close that 25% of GDP that we spend versus that 14.5% of revenue that's coming in. We've all come up with different ways to increase that revenue and reduce that spending, and we're going to continue to promote plans that will increase revenue through dramatic changes in the tax code. And you can do so without raising tax rates. You can actually lower tax rates. You can do so without raising taxes. Just in addressing the question on the economic growth, that's a perfect example, and that's not anybody who is a part of this group or any other group that's made a proposal. That's the director of the CBO. He says if you broaden the base, exact words that we've been using, you broaden the base and you energize the economy, then you will see the revenues increase to point to where they need to be able to address the debt.
But all the revenues would be coming from the growth projection, from a pro-growth score, from a dynamic score, not from actually raising the net level of taxation.
We're not going to dictate to the committee how they approach it.
We've got plans out there that have been scored by CBO and others. I don't know if Johnny and Gene, anybody else wants to add 2 cents before we go, or should we? Yeah, Johnny, Gene.
On the spending question that the gentleman asked back here, I think the answer to that is, if we meet the challenge before us, corporate America will be spending the money and they'll be hiring people to come back. And the spending we need to see in our economy is in the private sector, not in more government. So if we can lay a platform and a template that brings about growth, that expenditure and those jobs will come from the investment of the private sector.
Gene, do you want to add? Or we got actually 3 parties here. I don't know if Senator Lieberman wants to add a closing.
I want to ask the 2/3 of the independent caucus to. We're sorry Bernie couldn't be here today.
We'd be together as friends. That's right. What a team.
Well, what can we say? I'm excited to be here. The Gang of Six grows to the group of 36. You asked a question about what the leadership reaction to this will be. If 36 of us in the Senate across party lines stick together, the leadership has to react. Maybe they'll look back and say that today was the beginning of the Washington spring, as opposed to other springs that are occurring elsewhere in the world.
It's getting dangerous here.
Anyway, look, I thought what Kelly said before is so true. To put America in the deep fiscal hole we're in today took a lot of irresponsible behavior by members of both parties in both houses of Congress and in the White House. And to get us out of the hole, it's going to take a lot of responsible behavior by members of both parties in both houses of Congress and in the White House. And I think today is a day that this group should give the American people hope that might actually happen in this session.
Just to wrap it up then, we can legislate around here. We know how to do that. We know how to stop things. But one thing that is difficult, it's kind of beyond our control, is how we can lend an air of confidence to the American people that we can actually make something happen. And if you don't leave this press conference today feeling a little more confident that this Congress, or at least this Senate, can act together not for the good of our respective parties, but for the good of the American people, then I would suggest you didn't pay close enough attention to those who were gathered here today. I think today sends a very strong signal of hope and of confidence that this process can work for the betterment of the country. That's what we're here for. Thank you.
I'm joining you.
All right.
People said amen.
Amen.
The Democrat answer your question.
That Henry and Mitchell will bar it. I want to make that.